Hello, hello. This is an updated video of my journey into my current path. How I got those terms, how I got into it, period. If you look at the old videos that I've had on here for years, going back to late 2015, like the last month or two of 2015, you will see that I talk about my path and my journey like any YouTuber would, sprinkled over several videos. But I wanted to just give you one compiled here. I think it's very important when we as pagans and magical practitioners talk about how we got into where we are and how it evolved, because it helps inform you. Uh, it helps you feel not alone. It helps you rethink your journey. It helps you maybe tweak your journey. It helps you realize, hey, I've got something special here because my journey is not like other people's journeys. All the things. It does all the things. So, where do we start? The year was 2002, and I was in the 8th grade. The beginning part of 8th grade. And one day, I was coming into school, and I sat down on the bleachers because we would always get to school early, my friends and I, and a lot of people did this, to kind of congregate and talk and hang out before school. So, I get to the bleachers, sit down, and this girl that I had become friends with that year walks in, carrying this purple book with a witch on the front riding on a broom. But she's not like a hag-looking witch. The image is of like this like reddish-haired, like beautiful woman who's on a broomstick. And besides like the show Bewitched, and I guess Hocus Pocus to some degree, I had never really seen, I don't think, any images of like the classic witch on a broomstick being beautiful. Like I said, except for Elizabeth Montgomery in Bewitched. So immediately I was intrigued because witches were something that ever since I was just like can comprehend, I've just always been drawn to. I think they're so cool. I love fantasy. I love the idea of fantastical magic, fantastical creatures, all that. Like, all of that. The Chronicles of Narnia books were big for me as a child. I was not allowed to read Harry Potter as a child because I grew up in a very religious home. But I could read the Chronicles of Narnia because C.S. Lewis was a very open, born-again Christian. So, and they sold his books in the Christian bookstore. So anyway, I loved fantasy and witches and magic. It seemed so cool. And she brought this book in, and I immediately was kind of scared, a little, because, again, I came from a very conservative Protestant Christian home, and, was taught to fear that kind of stuff. So, I was kind of scared. I remember feeling like this sensation in my gut, like, ugh, but then also feeling like this sensation, like, I don't know, like up here somewhere, like up here, that felt like warm, and I was excited too. And I remember feeling both of those feelings at the same time. And I was so kind of confused, like, but excited and scared. And she talks about how she had stolen it from the local bookstore. And that scared me too. Because, again, I was very sheltered at that age. This is 2002, so I'm 13. And I was just very like, whoa, she's dangerous, but it's kind of cool. And she opened it up, and I didn't look at it. She was showing it to these other girls, and because I hung out primarily with girls. If you grew up as a gay boy, you know. So they were looking through it, and I was like, I'm intrigued, but I can't look at that. I'm not allowed to look at that. Like, I'm so scared. Well, fast forward to, I think, just a day later, and she and I shared a class together, and it was a free period that day, So we're just sitting there in that class. Everyone's being quiet, doing their thing. And I got like a really bad headache. No. It was a stomach ache. I'm sorry. I remember I got a stomach ache. And I laid my head down on my desk. And I felt horrible. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "My stomach hurts so bad. And I don't know why." And she said, "Oh, I have a spell for that. Do you mind if I look one up for you?" And I was like, "Sure, I guess." Again, like scared, nervous, excited, confused, stomachache. And she flips through that book. And that is when I actually saw the title. And it was To Ride a Silver Broomstick by Silver Ravenwolf. If you are a millennial witch or a late Gen X witch, you know that book. Like, you know that book. So I saw it, and I was like, "That's that book again." And she looked through it, and she found this healing spell, and just read out the rhyming words of the spell. You know, ignored all of the setup for it, like any candles or herbs or any of that. The spell, you know, like the ritual part. And just read out the words, the rhyme. And I wish I could remember it, but read out this rhyme. And she said, "Well, I don't have all of my tools, but I guess we could just try the words." And she said, "Repeat after me." And she said it. And I said it. And I said, "Thank you." And she kind of like chuckled a little, and she's like, "I mean, it's supposed to help." And I remember like reciting it over and over and over. And I think just the reciting of it helped me forget about my stomach ache. And I immediately that was it. That was my hook. I was like, "This is awesome. This is awesome." Literally within that same school year, she got over that, as did all the girls. They were all like, "Oh, that was cute, cool book, whatever," and got over it. But that was it. The doors were open. So at this time, my brother had gone off to college a couple of years before, in the year 2000. So it's 2002, and every summer he would come home, because he had gone to college in Arkansas, and we live in Alabama. So he would come back to Alabama, and he had a computer. We didn't have a computer. We grew up very, very poor, like laughably poor sometimes. So he brings home this computer, and it's the year 2002. Computers are still really new. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, a computer." Which it wasn't my first time to see it. He had had it before. He had gotten a computer in like 1999 or something, because he was working as a bag boy at a grocery store and saved his money up and used it to buy a computer. But anyway, so he brought his computer back, and I would always love the summer because then I get to go on the internet. This new thing. It was so cool and exciting. But this year, I believe it was that same year, 2002, was the year that he had bought a new computer. He had upgraded. So he brought his old one and gave it to us to keep for forever. And I was so excited. And I just remember like looking up anything I could. And I didn't have the terminology, so I would just look up the word witch and try to find, like, I remember typing in like real life witch, real life witch, like over and over and over, because I didn't know what else to type. And very soon I learned about deleting your browser history, because I remember my brother being like, "Hey, I don't know what you're looking at there," like as if it was X-rated. But you need to do this, like take this away. So he helped me out. So I would go and look up all this stuff about witchcraft and then try to delete it. But I remember finding out about this thing called Wicca. And that was mind-blowing, because then I thought, oh, this is actually for real. This isn't like a game. Like, this isn't role-playing. It's not like the Chronicles of Narnia or Harry Potter or Hocus Pocus, where the magic just comes out of your hands and you see sparkles. Like, obviously that doesn't really happen. Unless you're on drugs, but that's... So, I remember thinking, Wicca, this is like a real thing? Like, there's a religion to this? And at that time, I'm 13. I already was questioning my sexuality. I already was questioning the religion I was brought up in. I was already making definitive decisions that was not for me by the time I was ending like midway through my 12th year of life. I was already like, this isn't for me. And so that caused a lot of struggle in the home. But yeah, so I remember looking at Wicca, and then I discovered, like, through Wicca, like, about the difference between Wicca and witchcraft. And what really blew my mind was that there was a goddess. There was this female power, like God, like this all-powerful woman. That blew my brain out as a little 13-year-old. I couldn't comprehend that. I was like, there's a woman who's up there in the sky or something. Because, I was having to tie this, play off of Christian theology that I was taught. So I was like, there's this woman up there in the sky. She's super big, like a giant woman. And she can, like, change the weather and create life and, like, move the earth around. And, like, she's, like, God's equal. Like, what? What? It just, whoa. So I immediately was drawn to that because I had, not liked what I saw of God in the church. So I thought, I'm just going to focus on this goddess thing. This is awesome. Because I didn't like how God had hurt me or been used to hurt me and a lot of other people. I didn't like that. And I also never felt like I fit in with boys and guys in my life as a child. Because they were so rough and I was, like, very sensitive and quiet. I wasn't rowdy and rough and, like, into sports or cars or anything like that. So I thought, I don't like God. I don't like guys like that. So I don't fit in with guys. So I mean, it was like, goddess is my jam. So anyway, I spiraled for a couple of years on that. And I remember learning about, like, the term wizard and sorcerer, sorceress, enchanter, enchantrix, or enchantress, creator, creatrix, like, all this stuff. And I just started just absorbing as much as I could. I mean, I Googled everything I could think of. I would just open a new tab. I just fell down this hole. And at this time, I was really intrigued by the Celtic stuff because my mom was always really big on our Irish heritage. That was, like, her thing that she really loved. So I was always taught about that. And our English heritage. And so when I found out that, like, witchcraft, Wicca, these words and terms are kind of attributed to there, I was like, okay, lights are going off. I don't know what the connections mean yet, but lights are going off. And then I remember coming across the word warlock very young, and it was from the Casper movie. Not the original Casper movie with Christina Ricci, but they did a Casper and Wendy the Witch movie, and it was Hilary Duff when she was very little. And the villains in it were called warlocks. But I remember, like, loving that word. It just it enchanted me. The minute I heard that word, I remember being like, I love that. Like, I love that. I don't know why. I just loved the sound of warlock. Warlock. It sounded so cool. I liked the way it sounded more than witch. I liked the way it sounded more than wizard. I never liked the word wizard as a kid. But warlock. Ooh. But then I immediately, was told that these are bad guys. But at this time, I'm being told that I'm a bad guy. Because I'm 13, going into 14 now. And I know that I'm attracted to the same sex. And I know that I do not believe in Christianity anymore. And I'm starting to get into a lot of trouble at home for this. A lot of trouble. And I'm also not fitting in at school. I'm not even fitting in with the nerdy people. Like, I'm hanging out with the outcast people, but even within the outcasts, I am an outcast. So I felt demonized all the time and rejected, and so I immediately started sympathizing with characters like that in fiction. So warlock, I was like, is this me? Is this me? This just seems like a part of me. And so at 15, I'm still just, these 2 years, I'm just searching and learning. That's all I'm doing. I'm learning about pentagrams and pentacles and all these different paths, druidry. Like I'm just reading, absorbing voodoo, everything I can. Just reading and learning for like 2 years. And then I turned 15. And life goes really bad. It was one of the darkest years of my life to date. A lot of stuff happened. Some homelessness happened. I finally decided to stop gay conversion therapy. I was like, we're not doing this. But it did kind of wind up coming in later, but that's like a confusing timeline. But that's when I finally started to find my voice and stand up for myself and not be that quiet, sensitive little kid. I started getting like angry and getting a backbone. This is when I really fell in love with like goth and punk culture, as a lot of us do as teenagers. So I started dressing in all black, of course. But that's neither here nor there. But that culture, that subculture and anti-culture helped me develop an armor where I could, start to speak for myself. So at 15, though, that's when I started keeping a book of shadows. I had learned for 2 years. I had gotten into this angsty phase. And I thought, I'm going for this. I've been reading about it for 2 years. I'm doing it. I'm going to practice now. So I kept a book of shadows in a little composition notebook. I actually still have it on the bottom of my shelf. And I wrote down literally every spell I could find on the internet. I just wrote it down. Healing spells, hexes, curses. I mean, it was like anything. I was just like, we're writing that down. We're writing it down. We're writing it down. And I started writing my, I started writing my dreams in there as well. And then I started trying to expand on like ESP. So I wanted to try to grow my intuition. So I recorded that in that journal, where like me testing out clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairgustus and all the clairs. Me testing out psychometry. That's when I found out that I had a huge knack for psychometry, which is like psychic touch. It was a wonderful time. But also, like I said, one of the darkest years of my life, outside of the magical stuff. It was terrible. But at the same time, in juxtaposition to this intense darkness that I was going through, I was coming into this like amazing magical journey. And I learned about Morgan Le Fay and the Morgan and Shiva. And those were like two big influences for me. I thought, if I still was trying to work off the Wiccan template a little. And I thought, well, maybe my matron and patron are Shiva and Morgan. But then I would also go through these phases of like atheism or agnosticism. And I was like, I believe in magic, but not gods. It was complicated. But you're finding yourself. So that was great. So that, held me through 15, 16 years old. I'm still learning. I'm growing. I'm practicing magic. I'm casting spells. But I'm doing it like in a very, what I called a shamanistic view. Because I couldn't gather tools at that time. I couldn't buy candles. I couldn't buy any books. My internet access would be here and there random because I wasn't living at home. And I couldn't use tools. I couldn't use tools at all. No tools, no candles, nothing. So I learned to just go into trance. I learned to just visualize, to sculpt energy just with my hands, like through visualization, and to cast spells with nothing but my own body and mind. And I think that helped me ultimately to this day. Me growing my imagination and using my imagination as a magical tool. Like just making up conversations with gods in my head that would then jump off into real conversations with gods in my head. Playing pretend as this coming to adulthood. It was great for me. And And to this day, I don't rely heavily on tools. They're fun. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was a great and horrible time. So we get to 17 to 18. I'm out on my own. And actually, it was 18. And I was coming into 19. And I thought, okay, so I've been reading, exploring, growing my gifts, exploring my gifts, finding out what gifts I have, practicing spell work, learning how to perceive energy, manipulate energy. I've just been practicing and growing. I kind of put myself through like warlock school, right? Now I want to dedicate myself to this path. I was almost 19 and I thought, this is it. I am committing myself to this path for the rest of my life. Like, this is for me. This is for me. This is it. This is my path. So I was staying in a pink house, this cute pink house that had rounded doors. Even on the outside, it was really cool. And I remember going in the backyard. We had a little fenced-in backyard. And laying down on the grass. And I had a new journal at this time, a new book of shadows. And I remember writing down everything, like giving myself a structure. I gave my path a name. And at this time I was just calling myself a mystic pagan. Because I knew I didn't want to be a witch. But for some reason, I don't know why, but I didn't even entertain the idea of the warlock word, even though I loved it so much. And I think it's because I felt the peer pressure behind that word. So I was like, I'm a mystic, I'm a pagan. So I remember, and there are videos about it on my channel, where I came up with this concept of something called the paradox, the ether, which my name for the fifth element was, the enigma, and I came up with all these terms to explain concepts and answers that I had about the universe. I built my own religious system, essentially, my own magical system. Not really religious, but magical. Because that's just me. I never want to, because of my Christian upbringing, where I was forced to follow someone else's rules, I decided that in my pagan path, I would follow no one else's magical system. I would create my own. So, that's what I did. I wrote it all down. This is what I believe. There's room for change and growth in here, but this is what I'm believing. This is how I'm labeling things. And I laid down on the grass, and I called on Shiva and Morgan Le Fay and said, I want you to guide me on this path. I am now and forever one to honor the earth and to be, I think I wrote actually, to be a mystic neo-pagan. And then it was like the minute I did that, my life went really bad again. I had just come out of, like I said, horrible, horrible darkness. And then I was thrust into horrible darkness again, just as I got some light. But then I finally started to gain true foundation in my life, true courage, true confidence. My life actually kind of started at 19, I feel like. Finally. I finally came into myself. And I was like, this is it. This is it. And I think it took me doing that, kind of going through that ritual. Well, I used the term pagan after that for many, many years. People would throw the word witch to me or shaman, and I was like, sure. But I never really, used them for myself. I just didn't mind if people called me that. I'm like, sure, I'm a witch. Sure, I'm a shaman, sure. And it wasn't until I came here on YouTube, late 2015, that I started thinking, maybe I like other terms. I started toying with the Hindu term. Started toying with witch again. Hindu witch. I had a descriptor for myself saying that I was a gem warrior because I was always a fighter in my life. I was always having to fight. And I loved gemstones. So I was a gem warrior. And then finally, in late 2017, early 2018, I started thinking, I want to be called a warlock. Like, I want to be a Celtic warlock. Because I had, like I said, I had learned and searched for so long, learning about every magical path I could, every mythology I could, every folklore I could get my hands on, from every culture. So at this point, I'm like so hyper eclectic. And then finally, late, like I said, 2017, 2018, coming into 2019, I was like, sis, this is it. I am a warlock. And the foundation for my path is going to be that I focus on the Celts. Which I had already been doing this whole time. But it's like my brain finally caught up with my spirit, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. But it's like finally I was able to step away from myself and see what I had been doing all these years. And see the reoccurring themes in my magical practice. I was like, wow, so I'm constantly working with Celtic magic and Celtic gods. Maybe I should just say that and focus on that. Like, acknowledge that. Wow, I'm also constantly underneath that Celtic stuff, always reading about Hindu stuff. So maybe I should, okay. Wow. These seems to be the reoccurring themes in my practice. Why don't I just out loud vocalize and focus on that? You know what I mean? So it's like I kind of restructured and gave myself structure, because otherwise I just go off. On my path, I give myself a firm foundation to fall back on. And at this point, I'm approaching my 30s, so it was perfect. It was the ending of a decade, of my life. So yeah, I kind of reformulated, reconfigured, figured out stuff magically. So now I'm in my 30s, catch up to now. And yeah, Celtic warlock with a Hindu rising. But honestly, labels at this point aren't very important to me. You can call me anything. However, I do like warlock. That's me. That's my jam. That's my thing. I feel like into your 30s, I guess, I mean, I'm still new into them. I'll be 32 this year. I guess you just kind of get a new level of confidence. A new level of, I don't give up at all. I don't give up. I guess you get a new level of that in your 30s. I'm guessing it just grows as you get older, because we've all talked to older people who just don't give a... they don't care. So that's exciting. Yeah, I can say that I truly am confident in my magical practice, in my magical beliefs. I'm confident in my magical, power. I'm confident in my skills, my divination skills, my spellcasting skills. I have a confidence now. And I think that's great. I'm so happy that I stuck with this path for this long. So happy. Also, I didn't talk about it, and this is very random, but I'm kind of reminiscing now. But all through my 20s, especially my early 20s, I pimped myself out hard as a magical hoe. And what I mean by that was I gave so many Ogum and Oracle readings in my 20s to just everybody. It was intense. So many strangers. So many people that I've never met again. Met them that one time. Was like, oh, hello, reading, goodbye. Never see you again. I also did energy work. Kind of like Reiki, but not Reiki. Although I did do some Reiki. But I would do chi cleansings, aura cleansings, chakra balancing. I did that constantly. But it was every night of the week, I would have 2 to 3 people. And a lot of them were reoccurring, and some of them were friends. But there were so many strangers that would just find me. I didn't advertise it. I wasn't on the internet like that. They would just find me. It was really weird. But again, it was kind of like in my teenage years. I had learned all this stuff. I had absorbed all this knowledge. And then in my 20s, it's I just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. It was wild. It was wild. Anywho, that's my journey. I would love to hear your journey. I truly would. Truly. Because we're all so different from each other in this magical community. But that's how I came to be a Celtic warlock. And, yeah. I can't believe I went on that long. But here we are. It's 2021 as we film this. I am about to be 32 years old. And I am a Celtic warlock. And without this path, I would be so struggling. So struggling. Mentally, emotionally, physically, in every way. I cannot imagine my life without magic in it now. It is who I am. It's infused into the fiber of my, like, fucking soul. You know? Anywho, that's my journey of how I came into this. There's so much more in there, but you know how it goes when you try to recount your own timeline. Thank you so much for watching. I really want to hear from you. I want to hear your story. And you can leave me ideas for new video topics. What do you want me to talk about? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to show you? Leave all that down below. And remember, my links are below where you can find me on Twitter, Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe here. And you can book a reading with me over on my Facebook page, which is also linked below. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you so much. And goodbye.